The 2026 college football offseason is officially underway. And with that being said, there are a lot of changes coming up in the next year. And one of those being the coaching changes. Today, we're going to break down our top 5 worst hires in 2026 head coaches in college football. Starting with number 5. But before I get there, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 1,000. We really appreciate all the support so far. And joining me today to break down this top 5 worst hires, ladies and gentlemen, new co-host for Break the Huddle and current betting expert, Rooster's Cocky Picks. Rooster, first episode, and let's waste no one's time. Let's jump right into it. Starting with number 5 and counting down to number 1, starting with the Arkansas Razorbacks and Ryan Silverfield. Coming over from the Memphis Tigers. And Rooster, I'll hand it over to you. Obviously, this is a guy who's had much success at Memphis, 50 and 24 overall records since 2020 to 2025 when he took over from Mike Norvell. He's had a lot of success, but tell the fans why this might be the worst hire in college football in 2026.
There's a couple of things that go into this for me, and I feel like this is just a rinse and repeat of what Sam Pittman tried to bring to Arkansas. Ryan Silverfield, he's a coach that relies on a strong run game, and he builds his offense through his offensive line, and he tries to be a run-first offense. That's what Sam Pittman tried to bring to Arkansas a couple years ago when he got hired from Georgia's offensive line coach. Arkansas brought him in. They tried to improve the offensive line. We saw how that went. It was an absolute disaster. They really could never get anything going. And then on the second hand, the SEC is full of some big boys up front on the defensive line. It is going to be a monumental task to get some strong, heavy offensive line recruits into Arkansas because of all the other offenses you see in the SEC. To go along with all these other Big Ten schools that are paying a bunch of money, all these Big 12 schools paying a bunch of money, it's going to be hard to get top offensive line recruits at Arkansas because Arkansas, while they do have one of the wealthiest boosters in all of the world, they have not shown an ability to want to pay for players up front. And if you don't have the backing from the boosters, it's going to be very tough to build anything at Arkansas. And then to go along with Ryan Silverfield being what I view as a very similar coach to Sam Pittman, Arkansas is probably the worst football program in the entire SEC. And that's in a conference with Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU, just name a few. These teams, you're going against Arkansas. You're trying to build a football program that has not been successful against these absolute monster programs in football. I personally think if I was Arkansas, I would have tried to go for somebody like a Will Stein, maybe even a Brian Hartline, or James Franklin, who's a great recruiter. I think they lost out in the Battle of Virginia Tech with James Franklin. But Arkansas, you've got to do something different to try to get more out of your players. Ryan Silverfield, it's hard to get a lot of offensive linemen and running backs who are very under the radar because teams recruit these positions so heavily. If you bring in somebody like a Will Stein, he's able to get more out of his offense because he's able to run an air raid offense. That's not what Silverfield does. When you run an air raid offense, you're able to open up the defense. It gives him a lot of unique looks that many people don't see throughout the course of the year. And I just feel like Arkansas, with the state of their program right now, needed to go for somebody a lot more flashier. I just don't think Silverfield is going to bring a lot of enthusiasm to this program.
Yeah, and it's a tall task for any coach heading in to Fayetteville, Arkansas to coach the Razorbacks. It is what it is. You're in the SEC, and we've seen what Indiana has done with Kirk Cinetti, but it's just a different style of coaching. He preaches it, he teaches it, he lives it. It's another thing to come into the SEC, have no SEC experience. Now, he's been an offensive assistant here and there. He's had some NFL experience as well. So it's not to say he's a bad coach. They still rank ninth in the transfer portal overall rankings for team rankings at number 9. Pretty good ranking for the Razorbacks. They bring in only 2 4-stars. and they bring in a lot of offensive linemen. But to your point, the top offensive linemen are not going to come to the University of Arkansas. They're just not. They're going to go to the Georgias, the Miamis, the Oregons, the places where they can get developed. Heck, we even saw the top lineman in the portal come out of Colorado because why? He wasn't being developed. He wants to go play for a team where he can develop into a first round draft pick. He made his NIL money. Now he wants to go get developed to make even more money. Because guess what? In the world of college football, if you're a top offensive lineman, not only can you go to a school where you want to get developed even more, you can also get paid at those schools. So it's just a really bad combination when you're looking at the Razorbacks coming into this year. I agree with you completely, Rooster. It's one of those hires where, yeah, it's not like a terrible, terrible hire, but you had better options out there. You're an SEC program. Obviously, the boosters and the people funding NIL had their say in this coaching hire as well. I think originally they wanted Alex Golish. They couldn't get him. He goes to Auburn instead. And now they have to settle for a group of five coach that, yes, has proven success, but Alex Golish has more proven success on the offensive side of the ball. I'm interested to see how this one works out. And I'm also interested to see how the Razorback fans feel about Ryan Silverfield coming into this year. Be sure to let us know down in the comments what you think about Ryan Silverfield. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4, the Florida Gators hired John Summerall from the Tulane Green Wave. Here's a guy, again, who's had a lot of success in Group of Five, but Florida swears that they're not going to do what they did last time with Billy Napier, a great relationship builder, a great recruiter, just not a great coach. Now, do I think John Summerall has a little bit more toughness in him, a little bit more rough around the edges, maybe someone who can deal with the media better? Sure. But he's still coming from a Group of Five program that, yes, he coached at Troy, went 11-2, 12-2. Then he went 9-5 in his first year at Tulane, 11-3 his second year, 7-1 in the conference. But to me, that's not a big enough sample size to say, yes, we want him to be the head coach of the Florida Gators, who's supposed to be a prominent program like Miami, who's looking to get back to the heydays that once were a national championship program. Rooster, I'll turn it over to you. Why do you believe this is at our number 4 spot for the top 5 worst hires in 2026?
Well, Nate, I don't think John Sumrall is a bad coach. He's a great recruiter. He's going to be able to get players in there into Florida. He's going to impose his will into that program. He's going to try to make them as successful as possible. What I think makes this a bad hire is their expectations to what they actually ended up getting. They went from a school who was looking at they were the favorite for Lane Kiffin for a long time until Brian Kelly got fired at LSU. And then they had James Franklin come open. I personally think that Florida should after James Franklin. James Franklin has a proven track record of winning. I know people they say, oh, well, he can't win the big game. Florida can't win any game right now. They got run out of the building against Kentucky. Like, they need to get players in there who are athletic, fast, quick, and that's just not what Florida is right now. Florida right now is doing good is to win football games. They lost to South Florida. They lost to Kentucky. Like, they're not in a good state of mind right now at all. And then on the other hand, when you go from a Lane Kiffin, who is this flashy, elite, high-powered offense, to John Summerall, I mean, it's just kind of a letdown overall amongst the whole program. And nothing against John Summerall. I personally think he is a great coach. I just think that going from Troy to Florida in the span of 3 years is a very rapid acceleration.
Yeah, I agree completely. Listen, he's a great recruiter. He's a great coach. We know the man he is on and off the field. That's great. But in the game of college football, it's all about winning games. That's what you're there to do. You're there to win games. And as you mentioned, James Franklin was available and they didn't jump on it. Virginia Tech did. And we're going to talk about him and our top 5 best hires next week. So stay tuned for that episode. But when it comes to John Summerall in Florida, you're exactly right, Rooster. They need stability, right? And with John Summerall, he's a good coach, but it's all about potential. You need proven track record. You need proven wins at the top level. And John Summerall just simply doesn't have that yet. It's not to say that he can't, but when you're going into a program where the expectations are national champions or bust, and you throw a group of five coach in there, it's asking too much. He doesn't have enough time to turn that program around. If you want a 10-year track record for John Summerall to turn that Florida program around, sure, have at it. But I guarantee you, Rooster, and I think you would agree with me, they expect John Summerall to turn this program around in the next 2 to 3 years. And that's all he's going to get. And I just don't think
I would
that's enough
say
time.
I would say now any program in the SEC after watching what Kurt Signetti did, their expectation in 1 year is to at
Yeah.
least win 8 or 9 games.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And especially at a program like Florida, where you have the money, you have the resources, you have the conference prestige, you've got everything you need. Now you got to go out there and win. And to me, it's about potential for John Summerall. It's not to say he's a bad coach, but when it comes to bad hires this year, he still remains at our number 4 spot for that exact reason. He's not a program stabilizer. He's a program potential builder. And you can't afford to have that right now if you're Florida. You've already had bad coach after bad coach after bad coach. Dan Mullen was your last best coach, took you to an SEC title game, and you fired him. So I don't know what you want to say as a Florida fan, but the reality is you keep hiring for potential instead of stability. With James Franklin, he at least gives you the opportunity right off the bat to come in there and win 8 to 10 games in his first year, in my opinion. Maybe I'm dead wrong for that. Maybe I'm dead right. We're going to find out what he does at Virginia Tech this year. But I can promise you, if he comes in there and wins 10 games at Virginia Tech, Florida fans are going to be going, maybe we made the wrong hire.
I mean, as you mentioned, Florida is looking for somebody to stabilize their program. And John Sumrall came in there, and within the span of 1 week, they kicked out the chosen five-star quarterback in the likes of for Aaron Philo, who don't get me wrong, he is an elite passer, holds the Georgia State high school record for passing yards. But you're going from somebody who was, albeit he did have some rough performances at Florida. He was the number 1 overall recruit in the country 2 years ago. You're kicking him out the door for somebody who does not have a proven track record. If that one decision right there, if it flops on its face, his entire offseason high mojo, Florida feeling good about themselves, could do a complete 180 really quick.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Rooster. We're going to find out very quickly this season because, listen, Florida does not have an easy schedule heading into this year. They got some tough, tough games ahead of them. We'll get into that later as summer progresses and as we get closer to the 2026-2027 season. Let us know in the comments, though, what you think about your new head coach, John Summerall. Is he the right fit for Florida? Coming in at our number 3 spot, none other than Pete Golding of the Ole Miss Rebels. And this is a controversial take. We get it. But the reality is, he is an interim hire that put Ole Miss in a really, really bad position. Yes, he wins 2 games in the college football playoff. He beats a sorry Tulane team who had their head coach out the door. The last coach we just talked about already. Team wasn't mentally there. And then they go on and beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Great win there. I give them all the credit for pulling together. But let's not act like Charlie Wise Jr. didn't play a big role in that game. Rooster, I'll turn it over to you. Why is Pete Golding our number 3 worst hire in 2026?
Well, Nate, I'm not putting this as Pete Golding being a bad coach. I know I keep saying that. A lot of these situations are terrible. But Pete Golding, if they were to have this process over again and Lane Kiffin leaves after the season, nobody can tell me with a straight face that Pete Golding is who they would have hired as their head coach. The sad reality about this hire is that they hired him hoping that nobody would leave the program while they were sitting there trying to fight for their lives for a national championship. I know he has a proven track record of defensive coordinator at Alabama, and he was the DC at Ole Miss for a couple years. But Ole Miss's defense is not the reason they were winning games. The reason they were winning games is because of the Charlie Weiss Jr. and Lane Kiffin and the lethal offense they built on the offensive side of the football. Personally, if I was Ole Miss, I would have hired Charlie Weiss Jr. I don't even think they hired the best candidate in the building. Nevertheless, in the country, out of all the plethora of options they could have had, if they decided to wait and just name Pete the interim head coach, I don't see any I don't see any negative outcome that could have come out of this by naming Pete Golding the interim head coach and then waiting till after the season to conduct your full I guess complete interview session. I feel like nobody was going to leave Ole Miss out in the dust. None of their players were going to enter the portal after the season was over because it would be very hard to pass up the opportunity of being a national champion. But I think that Pete Golding, I feel like Ole Miss just hired him with a very short term outlook in mind. Like they hired him with 3 games in mind rather than looking at the next 3 years. If I was the Ole Miss athletic director, which of course I'm not, I would have at least made sure that Charlie Weiss Jr. had the option. Of course, he may have had the option to be the head coach, and he may have turned it down. We don't know all the facts about around that situation, but I feel like you at least had to do something to get an offensive mind as your head coach because Ole Miss is built on the flashy offenses and the pretty uniforms and everything. They're not built on this hard-nosed defense that Pete Golding's going to try and bring in.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough turnaround for the Rebels this year, I think. Yeah, they went in the portal big time. They lost a few key guys, unfortunately, but they also bring in a lot of great players as well. They get Deuce Knight from Auburn, who I think is a very good quarterback who has a lot of potential. Again, potential. I don't know how this works in the long run. Like you said, yes, he has a proven track record. And listen, we saw Kirby Smart get his shot at Georgia, right? No one really knew what he was going to do. He goes what 7-5 his first season at Georgia,
Yeah.
7-5, and then you see what he does after. So it's not to say that Pete Golding can't bring the culture that he wants into this program. But the reality is, like Rooster said, the offense is the reason why they were able to stay in these games this year because they gave up a lot of points. They gave up a lot of points against Miami. They gave up a lot of points against Georgia in both times that they played them. And the defense was the reason why they lost the first time against Georgia. So yes, I think he's a good coach. Again, none of these coaches on our list are bad coaches. It's just, is it the right hire for that program? And in our opinion, no, it's not. Pete Golding was not the right choice for Ole Miss, and I think you're going to look back on this in a few years and go, okay, time to move on, time to get another guy, and we'll see. Could be dead wrong, could be dead right, but as of now, we truly believe Pete Golding was just kind of a in place hire to keep that stabilized look. And listen, we talk about stabilization for Florida. It's a lot different than stabilization for Ole Miss. I think Rooster would agree on that. Rebels fans, let us know in the comments what you think about your new head coach, Pete Golding. Is he the right fit? Can he implement the right defensive culture for the Ole Miss Rebels to keep them on their trajectory of winning a national championship and continuously making the college football playoff? Coming in at our number 2 spot, probably my biggest worst hire. But 1 and 2 can probably go hand in hand. That is the Penn State Nittany Lions hiring former Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell to be their new head coach. Listen, here's the reality. I know Rooster will get into it as well. They fire James Franklin. They bring in Matt Campbell. To me, it's a lateral move. It doesn't increase the stability of your program. It doesn't increase the chances of you winning. I mean, James Franklin was a guy that took you to the semifinals just a year ago. And then you fire him because he has 3 bad losses. Listen, I've had people tell me off camera, but they gave him all the resources. They gave him all the money, and he still couldn't deliver. It was his worst year. They lost to Northwestern. They lost to all these schools. Listen, here's the reality. You're going to have bad seasons. And if Matt Campbell comes in here, he's going to have all the resources. He's going to have the same NIL money. And to make things worse, he brings in 30 transfers from Iowa State with him that are probably all 3 stars. Yes, they're proven on paper in terms of experience in college football, but you're not going against the Big 12 anymore, buddy. The competition gets stiffer, the stakes are higher. And this is a big, big chance for Matt Campbell that he's waited on. I just don't know if it's the right fit for Penn State. Rooster, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Nate, you hit the nail right on the head right there. You mentioned they fired James Franklin, and when they fired James Franklin, I don't think they had a plan in mind. When you fire a coach, you need to have at least an idea of who you're going to hire. They fired James Franklin and were just left with their heads looking around like, who are we going after? And then I think you're being very generous when you say it. You said this was a lateral move. This is a move that sets your program back 5 years. This is a reverse move, if anything. I mean, Matt Campbell's been a head coach for 15 years, 5 years at Toledo, 10 years at Iowa State. He has 5 seasons total of 9 wins or more. At Penn State, if you win 9 games, that's a disappointment of a season with the standard that James Franklin set. They fired James Franklin because they got tired of 10-win seasons and they couldn't get the 11th and the 12th win against Ohio State and Michigan. If they get upset with 10 wins, they are in for a rude awakening with Matt Campbell. Matt Campbell, again, he's a great coach for a school like Iowa State, a Big 12 school, who they are a basketball school. If with football, they're just happy if they make a bowl game. And then you bring in 23, I think it was 23 transfers and then a bunch more high school recruits. But like you mentioned, it was probably around 30 plus once you consider everybody who was committed to Iowa State, decommitted, flipped to Penn State and everything. And Iowa State is a team that really couldn't even get the job done at the Big 12 level. Nevertheless, the Big 10 level, when they're having to face the teams like Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State, and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern for Penn State is the level of competition when it comes to the player acquisition that they've had both in the portal and recruiting. Matt Campbell, again, a great coach at Iowa State. His overall record, 72-55. Listen, all these head coaches getting hired have great records. Lane Kiffin has a great record. Matt Campbell has a great record. Heck, Pete Golding, 2-0 and as a head coach for Ole Miss as an interim, right? John Summerall, great record at the group of five. Silverman, great record at the group of five. They're all good coaches, but sometimes it's not a great fit. And so for Penn State, we're going to find out very, very quickly. Rooster, I can guarantee you this. If they come out this year and win 6 games and say, well, we're rebuilding, I don't want to hear that excuse. You've been at the top of the mountain every single year and you fall. Even when James Franklin took his last playoff game with Penn State, I was at that game versus Notre Dame, and they had plenty of chances to win. I'm not sure if Matt Campbell's the guy that can get him back to the semifinal. I really don't. And to your point, everyone was pissed off that they couldn't win more than 10 games and make it to the Natty. Now they've seen Indiana make it to the mountaintop. Oh my gosh. If Matt Campbell can't get it done and James Franklin can't get it done, the only person that you could rehire or hire in general to get you there is probably Nick Saban. And he ain't getting up off the broadcasting booth. He's just not. So I don't know what Penn State was planning on doing. I think behind closed doors, they thought that they had a legitimate chance to get someone like Kurt Signetti away from Indiana. Maybe they thought they could bring in a big time coach and shake the college football world upside down. And then they end up with Matt Campbell. It was a pure disaster. And that's nothing to take away from Matt Campbell. It's just the reality of this sport. You thought you were going to get a guy. You fired your guy early. You had no plan in place. You thought you were going to be able to get a great hire. You get a decent hire. And that's the reality. But we're going to find out very quickly this year and next year what Penn State is made of, because I can promise you this. They're not going to wait around for success. They're going to demand it right away. And if they don't, those boosters are going to start pulling their money. And that's when Penn State could really, really dive deep back into the hole once again.
And then it's even a bigger slap in the face. It's an embarrassment to Penn State's program because a whole bunch of coaches were just using this as bargaining leverage to get a couple extra million out of the school they were at with no intentions of ever coming to Penn State.
Yeah, it's a bad look all around for the Nittany Lions. But let us know down in the comments what you think about your new head coach, Matt Campbell. Is he the right fit for you guys? And do you think he can take you to the promised land in the college football playoff? Standing strong at our number one spot, the number one worst hire in the 2026 college football coaching head coaching cycle, none other than Lane Kiffin. And this is by far the worst hire on multiple levels. And Rooster and I agree, but for different reasons. I'll start off with, well, Rooster, I'll hand it over to you. Why do you think that this was the worst hire for LSU or Lane Kiffin?
I think this was the worst possible situation for Lane Kiffin. At, Lane Kiffin could have stayed at Ole Miss. I mean, they had a very, very, very legitimate shot of winning the national championship this year. I think if he stays, there's a very real shot they at least make it to the national championship, and then God knows what happens if they actually made it there. But I think if Lane Kiffin stayed at Ole Miss, all he'd have to do is win 9 games a year, sprinkle in the occasional 10 or 11 win season, and he could still get away with an 8-4 season every 3 or 4 years or so, and people at Ole Miss are not going to complain about it. Ole Miss is not a team with a proven football program until Lane Kiffin arrived. He could have done exactly what he was doing, and they'd be building a statue for him in 10 years down the road. Instead, he goes to LSU, where the expectations are just astronomical. At LSU, Ed Orgeron won a national championship. They fire him not even 2 full years later. Brian Kelly comes in, makes it to the SEC championship his first year, and all because he won 9 games instead of 10, they wanted to cut his head off. I mean, this is just a ruthless program compared to the likes of what Ole Miss presents Lane Kiffin with. Lane Kiffin, I think, he's somebody who's not going to be happy until he's at the Alabama coaching job, which is what is his dream job. He may not ever admit it, but as soon as that Alabama coaching job comes along, he'll be hitting the road. And then LSU fans will be the same as the Tennessee fans, the Southern Cal fans, and the Ole Miss fans before him. He better look out for the golf balls when he heads back to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, to me, this is the worst hire for LSU because exactly what you said, Rooster. Lane Kiffin is never happy, right? He's like the office relationship that you start building, but they're still married. You end up together, they divorce the other person, and then lo and behold, 2 years later, you're crying, calling a therapist because why? They've moved on to someone else again, as if you couldn't see it coming. It's not shocking, guys. Even Stevie Wonder could see it coming. This is a guy who is afraid of commitment. This is a guy who will not stay forever. And when something else opens up that he thinks is better, he's going to leave you high and dry, just like he left the last person. And that's the reality. That's the beast of the nature. Yes, is he a good coach? Yes. Is he a winning coach? Yes. Can he get your LSU Tigers to the playoff? Possibly. And they do pick up, as of this recording, Princewell U, who is transferring over from Ole Miss. So he tampered a little bit. Just announced breaking news, Rooster, for you probably. Princewell U is signed with LSU now. So I mean, listen, he's going to get good recruits. He's going to get good players, but he's a bad fit for the LSU Tigers. If you thought Brian Kelly wasn't a culture fit, wait till this guy comes into town. My goodness, he will leave you high and dry quicker than you can fill up a glass of water at your fridge. I'm telling you right now, man, it just is what it is. To me, it's a scary, scary situation for LSU fans. They're excited as hell right now, and they should be. They just got Lane Kiffin. He's the cock of the walk. But the reality is, when it comes down to it, this is a guy who is not going to stay at your program forever. He is a program builder, but then he leaves right before the permits get passed from construction. I mean, that's really that's what it sounds like to me. And not sounds like it is. It's reality. Heck. So that's why he comes in at our number one worst hire. For Rooster, it's a bad fit for Lane Kiffin. For me, it's a bad fit for LSU. Either way, it makes it our number one top worst hire in the 2026 college football head coaching cycle. Let us know down in the comments, LSU fans. Do you like Lane Kiffin entering Baton Rouge, or do you think this is a recipe for disaster? Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Help us reach 1,000 subs. Really appreciate all the support so far. Drop your comments down below. We'll see you next week for the top 5 best hires in college football in 2026. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.